Welcome back for episode 68. If you didn't listen to the first part of our conversation with Dan Phillips talking about Nintendo Switch and games we're playing, make sure you go back and listen to that. But for this week, I'm going to have my daughter Nev introduce it for you. Nev?
And we're back with part 2 of our conversation with Dan Phillips. Enjoy!
Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
Great. Well, let's get into talking about the best games of 2016. So, about 4 months ago now, we had all of you, the listeners, and many others inside the community who maybe are just part of the Facebook group and not always a part of the podcast audience. But a whole bunch of us got together and cast our vote for the best games in 2016. We had a wide variety of categories, and of course, we closed out with our best overall game. And Derek and I, when we went through that, we also named our favorite games of 2016. And our plan was, at the time, to combine our lists and rank them. And as we started going through that process, we started talking back and forth and realized this is going to be tough to rank for a few reasons. But, one of them being we haven't gotten to every game from that year yet. And the other one being we needed a lot of time. We needed a separate time to sit down and discuss this and allow us some time to catch up a little bit, to process some games. And we also wanted more people involved in the conversation. So that's the biggest reason why Dan's on the show this week. Not only do we like him and he's a friend of ours from the group, but also he's played a lot of games. And we think he's going to provide some great insight on a lot of the games from last year. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to pause here for just a second. And you guys don't pause anything, okay? I'm just going to pause for just a second and switch over to our spreadsheet, okay? So for those of you who are visual, jump over to the YouTube video. You can see how we're organizing these games. And we'll be right back. Just give me 1 second to switch over. And we're back. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to go through this list of games from 2016, and we've done a little work beforehand, so we don't spend 5 hours doing this. But we're going to each nominate some games. The goal is to have a combined top 10. So if you tuned in a few weeks back, we had Colin and Kyle on the show, and we tried to rank our top 12 years in gaming. This is going to be somewhat similar in that once we get our list, then we will start, the three of us, going through and debating where each of these games should land. But the first part is the nomination process, and then we'll start chipping away at these things. So each of us have nominated 4 games. So we're going to start with a list of 12, and then we're going to boot out the last two, numbers 11 and 12. But you guys who are listening and watching the video, you can't see what those games are. So what we'll do is we'll just take turns right now listing each of our 4 games that we want to nominate. So let's just do one at a time. Go with you first, Dan. What's the first game from 2016 that you think deserves to be on this list?
Okay, my personal favorite from 2016 and the game I got to start with is Dark Souls 3. For me, Dark Souls 3 was pretty much everything that I wanted in a sequel to the series. At the time I played it, I haven't played Dark Souls 2 yet, but I played through Bloodborne completely, loved it. Played through most of the first Dark Souls on Xbox One backwards compatibility before this game came out, and was really getting into the series. Really liked it. When this game came out, I was very excited to play it, and dove right into it, plowed through. I played most of the game co-op with a couple of my friends, Brian and Sasan. We had a great time together. It was a social experience. Every weekend we'd be on playing Dark Souls together, but we'd be playing it in our free time too, and talking about it and our experiences and figuring stuff out. It was just one of the best moments in gaming I had in 2016, and I absolutely loved it.
Nice. All right. Cool. Derek, what about you?
It's got to be my game of the year, Final Fantasy 15.
Final Fantasy 15. Anything you want to say about it now, or you want to wait till we start debating it?
Final Fantasy 15 is awesome.
Well said. Yeah, good job.
I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, it is awesome. It really is awesome. All right, I'm going to throw in Uncharted 4. It's funny that this game was so highly anticipated, but a combination of its delay as well as what some people, from the criticisms that it got, in combination with them feeling like it was poorly paced, maybe a little overly long, things like that, it didn't end up sticking like people thought it would or hoped it would. Although in some outlets they gave it nearly perfect scores, in some cases perfect scores, and it was my favorite game of the year. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I wonder where that one's going to land on our combined list here because it's a not controversial, but it's a game that kind of it polarizes people. Some people really just didn't click with it. So anyway, we'll get there. Dan, what's your next pick that you want to throw on this list?
Next pick for me was kind of a surprise. Was a fan of the original series back when I was a kid. Was hoping this was going to be good, but Doom was just fantastic. I didn't even touch the multiplayer, and I don't think there's any reason to. The single-player campaign is fantastic. It was definitely the best shooter I played, I think, last year. Just great mix of that old-school arcadey arena shooter with some nuances and good gameplay mechanics as far as getting your health and ammo back. Just completely loved the loop. It was just one great arena fight after another.
Yep, totally agree with that. Cool. Yeah, I love Doom. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. Derek?
Gears of War 4, because it's better than Uncharted 4.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Derek, plug your ears for a second. I'm going to put Watch Dogs 2 on this list. It's a fantastic game. I don't
You know
care
what
he
pisses
says.
me off is you purposely put Watch Dogs 2 where I can't take it off. Like, it's a safe game.
It is one of my safe games. You're right.
It pisses me off. Yeah, I hate it.
Yep, it's one of my safe games. It was my second favorite game of the year, according to my original top 10 list. Now, I haven't revisited my personal top 10 list recently, so it may have been knocked down a notch or two if I really go back and evaluate. But as it stands now, it was definitely in my top 3, and I listed it as my second favorite game of the year. For those of us who actually stuck with it and tried it out and aren't, crotchety old men, and we can appreciate other generations of, like millennials, for example. Watch Dogs 2 was great. It was really great. So we'll get to that as well. All right, Dan, let's hear game. So these 6 right here, by the way, for those of you who aren't sure, we decided to each pick 2 games that are locked in. So these first 6, none of us can eliminate from the list.
They have to be on the list. We just don't know.
They're going to be on the list somewhere. I have a feeling Derek's going to fight for Watch Dogs 2 to be number 10. We'll get to that. But these have to be on the list. They can't be removed. Now, the next 6 that we nominate, 2 of them, our first task is going to be to eliminate 2 of them completely. So we'll get to that. But the rest of them are so basically out of these 6, these are not totally safe. They could be kicked out. Okay, so let's go head back to Dan and give us your number. I guess this is number 7. That'll be on the list.
Okay. This game didn't get a lot of love from you guys when you were talking about 2016, so I kind of had to throw it in there. It was a bit of a surprise for me, but I'm talking about The Witness. It's a puzzle game. It is a little convoluted, pretentious almost, but when you start figuring it out and how to do these puzzles, it is amazing, and you feel incredibly smart when you start figuring this out, and the game teaches you over time of just beating your head against the wall how to get around and figure these puzzles out and use the environments for your solutions. And before I knew it, I had scraps of paper hanging out everywhere. I looked like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind.
Oh my gosh.
It was ridiculous, but I was taking screenshots with my phone. It was pretty intense for a while, and just a real different experience from anything else I played in 2016. And it was really cool art style and just great puzzle game.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I'm glad to have you on, Dan, for real. And I say this with all sincerity. Derek and I did not click with The Witness, but you are now the second person that I've talked to, actually no, the third, that describes their experience with this game in such a way that I can't help but acknowledge this was a great game. It just wasn't for me. So I'm glad you're here to help represent this one on the list. So
definitely, I can see it not being for everybody, but I got probably about 3/4 of the way through the game. The puzzles get incredibly challenging and hard, and I just couldn't even press on any further. So.
Yeah, I've heard there's some really cool, like, big picture puzzles, and I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who's going to play it, but there's a way that they use the entire environment in later on in the game that kind of blew people's minds. That's all I'll say.
Yep, and when you see that for the first time and how that works, it's definitely it's worth that moment.
I just want to point out that I wanted to congratulate both of you because I told you I created folders on my PS4, and there's a complete folder and incomplete folder. Obviously, if I completed a game, it goes in there. Incomplete, it goes in there. but I created a special third folder, and it's called the F That You Piece of Trash Garbage Game. And you two, back to back, just selected both games that are in that folder. They're the only ones in that folder. Watch Dogs 2 and The Witness. So congratulations.
What about No
That's
Man's
really
Sky?
cool.
Is No Man's Sky not in that folder?
No Man's Sky got burned to hell. It's not even allowed to be downloaded on.
It can't even be in the folder. Wow. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
It's not even allowed to be in the folder.
All right, Derek. Add one.
It's got to be Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. I guess I should say something about it.
I was
don't-
like, is that all we're saying about it, or?
You don't have to. We're going to debate them here shortly. I also
Um,
agree that this game deserves recognition.
Yeah, I actually want to play the DLC. It's that good of a game. I don't always play the DLC on games. In fact, normally I don't. But that's one of the games where I actually want to go back into that world or that universe and play more of it. I beat that game twice and I just don't know, I just loved it. I loved the freedom. I loved the choices. I love the fact that you could attack each mission whatever way you want. You could do stealth, or you could play guns blazing. They punished you both ways. It didn't matter which way you went. So, really good game. Really, really enjoyed it.
Cool. All right, I'm going to add Hitman. That entire game released last year over the course of several months as it released episode by episode. You can get the entire game now as like a complete game, or you can download each episode separately, however you want to do it. It's a fantastic game. It is my favorite iteration of Hitman, and I've loved all of them. I played Blood Money, liked that. Absolution was great, all the way back to Hitman 2. The Silent Assassin game was great. So I loved all those games, but man, this version of just a straightforward Hitman game, you're going from mission to mission, is so good. We'll talk about that here in a little bit too. So, all right, here we go. So that's 9 games on the list so far. We're going to make it 12, and then some of the final 6 we nominated, they're all possible. They could all possibly be eliminated from this list. We'll see. So Dan, what's your last nomination?
My last nomination is Forza Horizon 3. I'm not a racing game guy. Usually I'll play a Need for Speed or something like that. I kind of like the more arcadey racers. Just it looked gorgeous. Heard a lot of hype about it. Played the demo. Loved the demo. Got the game. Is the first racing game in probably a decade that I've spent over 40 hours with. So absolutely loved it.
Nice. Cool. What about you, Derek?
My last one, Mafia 3.
Mafia 3. The one that looked really great in the lighting when you first played it, right?
Yeah, but I came around on that game and I don't know, just enjoyed the story. It is flawed. It's definitely flawed objectively, but subjectively, I just really, really enjoyed that game. Got into the world, into the characters. The way they did the story was probably the most interesting part of the game for an open world GTA style game. So I definitely love that game.
Okay. All right, so I've got the final pick here for our unsafe games. And before I pick it, I do want to throw a few honorable mentions, whether or not maybe the 3 of us didn't play some of these that much, or maybe it just didn't click with us. I just finished Battlefield 1. I think that's a fantastic war game. I'm not going to pick it, but I do think it's worth acknowledging as like an honorable mention. Highly recommend it if you like first-person shooters, especially if you like historically based games. It's very somber but very good. Dishonored 2, I haven't played it yet. It's right at the top of my backlog list. I actually had planned on playing that, but like I said, I accidentally started Mad Max and decided to dive into that. But Dishonored 2 is very high on my backlog list. I loved the first one. I know, Derek, I think you enjoyed it. And your comment to me was, you're going to love it. That's what you told me. So
Yeah.
that one should be mentioned, even though I'm not going to pick that one as well. I, of course, loved Far Cry Primal. But now that I've played Horizon Zero Dawn, I feel like I've got a better version of what I enjoyed about Far Cry Primal, although I still really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Fire Emblem Fates, fantastic Fire Emblem entry. I think Awakening was possibly a little bit better, but Fates is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here if I'm missing anything else. Of course, No Man's Sky changed my life.
Gotta give a shout out Ratchet and Clank.
Ratchet
That
and
was-
Clank was really good. Last Guardian, I think, took a lot of crap because it took so long to make. But Last Guardian, with all its jankiness, and it does have jankiness, was a very good game with a very emotional story to tell. But yes, it had enough issues with it technically that I couldn't put it on the top 10 or even 12 list, but I want to mention it. And yeah, the last one I'll mention is The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine. I was gonna throw this one on there, but I just want to mention that it is by itself an amazing game. But since it is technically part of the Witcher 3 experience, I'm going to leave it off this list. But I want to mention it. If it were on the list, it would shoot to the top of my favorites. If everyone agreed, it's a full game. But I'm going to veto it myself just because I think, again, it's part of the entire Witcher 3 experience. And if you played The Witcher 3, or even if you haven't, you owe it to yourself to experience this. If you like video games, if you like open world action RPGs, it's so good. It's so, so good. But the game that I'm going to put on this list is Titanfall 2. I think last year saw a number of really great first-person shooter experiences, and I think we have two of them on here to represent that, in Doom and in Titanfall 2, and I think that's a good representation. I think Battlefield 1 was great, but man, Titanfall 2 surprised me. I did not think I was going to enjoy it, but I wanted more of it. All I wanted was to dig more into that world. It was a lot of fun. So there you go. There's our top 12 nominees. You guys feel good about those? About starting to go through these?
Well, I feel
Yeah, I
good
think
about
so.
eliminating some of them, but I wouldn't say I feel good about all of them.
Well, we won't put them in the final rankings slots just yet. What we'll do instead is we'll start talking. We'll go ahead and start with you, Derek, because you've just got that negative vibe about you. We'll let you suggest, and it won't be solid quite yet. You suggest the first one of the final 6 there. By the way, I'll mention them for you that are just listening. The Witness, Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, Hitman, Forza Horizon 3, Mafia 3, and Titanfall 2. Which of those 6 would you suggest, Derek, first, that we get rid of?
Of course, I'm going to say The Witness.
Okay. Any reasons why, one way or the other?
I don't like puzzle games. I mean, Portal, I like Portal because Portal did more than just do puzzles. It had humor and well, it had humor. It had great humor. The Witness is just not a game I care about. So it's one of those, like, Tim puts it nicely and says, well, it's a good game that I just don't connect with or I don't care about. So that's really the nice way I would put it, but the truth is I just think it's trash.
All right, well, since that was a Dan nomination, Dan, why don't you explain to us why it should or shouldn't be on the list? Because I'm kind of in the middle here because I've heard you. By the way, a shout out to a coworker of mine named JB. He has a extensive knowledge of lots of tabletop games, but he also knows video games. And he, over lunch one day at work, went through for me why he loves The Witness so much and almost convinced me that I also love it, even though I've never played it. It was one of those types of conversations where I was like, man, his excitement and passion for this game is so real. I kind of stopped bashing it after that conversation, and because he was so into it and enjoyed it so much. So I'm kind of in the middle on this. I'd be okay with it being in the top 10. I couldn't really fight for it to go very high, but I want to hear what Dan has to say.
I think it's worth leaving on this list just for what it does represent. It was something kind of unique, and I don't think any other game has really done anything like this in a long time. Um, but like I said, it was kind of pretentious, and it does have kind of a high hurdle and barrier to entry on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like I've heard people explain it that's like learning a language, and the game teaches you to speak this language, and as you pick up little things and learn little things, you learn how to solve the bigger picture puzzles and more puzzles, and it is kind of neat how you progress through the game, and it's something that I haven't had to invest into learning quite so much, but it was a very enjoyable experience all throughout. But
Okay.
just with the fact that it is, kind of what it is, I could see it being left off this list too.
Well, I'm going to leave it highlighted for now to see what other cases are made here. Dan, what would be the first one you would suggest maybe doesn't quite make the top 10 out of these 6?
For me personally, it would be Deus Ex. I'm not a huge fan of the series. I've played it, and I respect them for what they are. Human Revolution was very, it did a lot of really cool things at the time that came out. It's just the gameplay of those games really, I've never been a huge fan of how the mechanics. They've always kind of felt a little clunky to me. They have great freedom of choice and how you can approach things. It's just the gameplay was always a little bit of a hindrance for me. So
Okay.
I'm not as big of a fan of the series.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm at a disadvantage here a little bit when I'm looking at these 6 games because I don't mean disadvantage, but I'm kind of biased because I never played Forza Horizon 3. I've only heard good things about it. I mean, I've only heard great things, but I mean, I've got Forza Horizon 2. It came with my Xbox One, and I enjoyed it. I played it for a little while. I have no interest in like I got to complete this game. It was more of this looks kind of pretty and it's kind of fun. I'm just not a car guy. I'm not a racing gamer. I don't watch racing on TV. Like nothing about it usually intrigues me that much. If cars are part of a bigger scale game like a Mad Max, like I'm playing, or like a Grand Theft Auto, yeah, I'm in. I'll drive cars around. But for a game that's totally centered on that, I have trouble enjoying them. So that one I'm kind of biased against, but I don't necessarily want to kick it off the list. As I look at all the other games, I feel the same way about Forza Horizon 3 as I do about The Witness. They represent unique categories that kind of made 2016 special. So I don't necessarily want them to be automatically off just because they weren't for me. Derek, what do you think about Deus Ex Mankind Divided? Because as soon as Dan said that, I hate to agree, but I feel like that one for me lands in the top 11, 12, 13 range simply because I'm not sure that what they did with that game was as special as what they did back in the day with the original or even with Human Revolution. So what do you think about Mankind Divided, or would you fight for that one to stay on?
I would fight for that one because it's one of my favorite games from last year. I think Human Revolution was a great game, but I think Mankind Divided improved on everything. Sure, it gets
Okay.
a little bit of bashing because a lot of people felt like the story wasn't great. I didn't feel that way. I played through it twice. I think it's one of those games that had a decent overarching story with pretty good mystery and so on, and especially the ending. The ending leaves you on a cliffhanger. I like cliffhangers as long as they eventually get resolved with another game, but of course the game didn't sell extremely well, so we're not looking at another game right now. So story-wise, I thought it was good. I thought gameplay is where they really, really stepped up. The shooting mechanics were way better in Mankind Divided than they were in Human Revolution. I felt like the level design and the worlds that you play in, while they're smaller than most games we're playing current day, like 2017, they were still open and varied. Like I said, when I picked the game allows you to play however you want, and it's real smart in how it does it. And I think I shared this when we originally talked about Deus Ex, and that was when Tim played through it. He did a bunch of like side missions for this one guy, like this mafia dude, who he eventually
That's
ends
right.
up helping or repaying back. And the first time I
Yep.
played the game, very first time I played it, I was sent to go see him, and I stealthed in through like the sewers or something, and I ended up killing. I kind of cheesed them, but I killed everybody in the room, and that
Including him. Yeah.
included him. And I ended up getting his gun, which was like this upgraded, awesome revolver. So that was the gun I used throughout the game, but I missed out on all his side missions and everything that he could do.
And all the rewards you get from that. Right.
Exactly,
Right.
and it did impact the story. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those games where the second time I played through it was actually, and I'm not saying this just to keep it on the list, it was quite varied, like completely different. Even though I had the same overarching story, the experience was completely different because of different things, decisions I made, and even just different paths I took. There's a part in the game, and I won't spoil it, where they give you 2 missions, and you have to select one or the other. If you do one, the other one happens at the same time that you're doing the one, and you can't go back and do it.
Okay.
And same thing, vice versa. If you go with that one, then the other one happens, and you can't do it. And it does have impact on the story and how it plays out. So I thought it was an intelligent, genius game, and I love it. So I want it on
Cool.
my list.
All right. Well, let me make a suggestion here, because Unless you guys think that Forza Horizon 3 shouldn't be on here, because I kind of feel like it should, if for no other reason that it represents a genre that it's just flat out not of interest to me, but most considered it to be a great game. We actually had a handful in our voting that picked this as their favorite game of the year. Not even just one of their favorites, but their favorite of the whole year. So I would like to suggest, based on the arguments you guys both made, that we get rid of The Witness and we get rid of Mafia 3. And let me tell you why I think we should get rid of Mafia 3. Because Derek, you kind of reminded me that how much I actually did enjoy Deus Ex: Mankind Divided as you described it, and now I'm kind of in my head playing back some experiences from there. I really did like that game a lot. So I do think it belongs on the list. But Mafia 3, as much as I enjoyed a lot of the story, it has a lot of style. I liked that New Orleans setting. The main character, Lincoln Clay, is very cool. The revenge story, kind of that straightforward mafia story, is great. I did not always love the gameplay. I really ended up approaching every mission the same way. You hide behind cover, whistle. The guys aren't smart enough to bring friends or to flank. They just walk to you. You can silent kill them. And I just went through every level doing that. Or I would just unload because some of the guns felt cool to shoot. It just didn't feel different enough, didn't feel special enough that I think it belongs in the best 10 games of the year. And it was a little too glitchy. There were too many moments that I had issues here and there. It didn't always play the smoothest, and it got a little repetitive. It was one of those games that even though I really enjoyed it, when it was over, I was glad it was over. I had no interest in doing all the side stuff. That's very different from open world games like Horizon, for example, or even Grand Theft Auto, where you really want to see the side stuff because it's all so unique and well designed. This had a very clear loop to the side stuff that I don't think was all that special. So there you go. I think Mafia 3 should be gone, and based on the arguments you guys made, they're both good arguments, but I do think Deus Ex has a leg up on The Witness. So my suggestion is Mafia 3 and The Witness off this list.
I can agree with both that.
Derek, what do you think?
Okay. I'm fine with it. I mean,
No?
I like Mafia 3, but I think the thing is, and I know, Tim, you're thinking objectively. I'm trying to do this more subjectively. Like, I want
It's fine
my
either way,
top
man.
10.
Do it all. Yeah.
But so that's why, like, I can say objectively, Forza Horizon 3 is probably the best racer I've ever played. But I have no problem kicking it off because I have no emotional attachment to racers. I enjoy them, but I have no emotional attachment. Same thing with The Witness. I know I joke around and say it's trash, but I have no emotional attachment to a puzzle game. So it means nothing to me.
But when we're talking about the best games of 2016, I think Mafia just wasn't a great game, and Forza was. So I think there's an argument to be made.
I agree. That's why I said I think I'm approaching this different than you guys. So I'm fine with getting rid of Mafia 3. I really liked it.
It had an
but
excellent
it was
story.
repetitive.
It was just, yeah.
And for the record, I think John Donovan, your side character friend for most of that game, is one of the coolest, like most suave characters. And of course, Lincoln Clay is just completely badass the entire time.
I think Mafia 3
like
is the opposite of Deus Ex, and I think Mafia 3 nailed stories and characters.
They did.
It fell flat with world and gameplay.
They did.
That's,
even though there were fun moments for both of those. You know, some of the cars
of
ended up feeling cool. But it didn't hit on every. It didn't check off every box. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So
I'm fine. Let's get rid of The Witness and Mafia 3.
All right. I'm going to move these over to our final rankings, and I'm going to put it below. Oops. I'm going to put them below the list. That way, no one.
Don't think I didn't notice that Hitman made it on here, Tim. So you better remember that I let Hitman on there without bashing it at all.
Well, do you want to make a case for it over
leave
Mafia
it
3
on
or?
Leave it
Okay.
on there.
All right.
Just making sure you understand you owe me. You are in debt.
And I didn't even ask you guys about. We've talked about all of them except for Hitman and Titanfall 2. Are those? Are those deserving
2
of spots?
To me is a lock for the top 10.
Okay. What about you,
Hitman,
Dan?
I played and I was like,
I agree.
man.
Okay. All right. So Hitman could be a controversial one on my side, including and Watch Dogs too. Man, Derek and I agree on so many things. All right. Let's
Terrible taste.
let's just start going kind of like we did with the comparing the years. We'll just start comparing them down here. So we'll start at the bottom of the list, and this is just, by the way, the order they were nominated in. It doesn't mean that we were trying to rank them yet. So let's compare Titanfall 2 to Forza Horizon 3. Which deserves to be higher on this list, regardless of where they end up?
Titanfall.
I'm gonna put Titanfall 2 ahead of it.
Yeah, so am I. Without even, yeah. Okay, that's just, I mean, again, this is my personal experience, so I would put Titanfall 2 above Forza Horizon 3. We'll talk about Titanfall 2 more in a minute. What about Hitman compared to Titanfall 2? Dan, did you play Hitman?
I can't really speak to Hitman. I haven't played it. Listening to some of the experiences people have had with it, and just the type of quality Hitman experience it is. I mean, I think it should be on this list, but where it ranks, I mean, for me personally, it's more towards the bottom.
I think
Okay.
Hitman is only better than Watch Dogs 2, so you can figure out where I would put it.
I can't really argue with Titanfall 2 being above it, so I'm going to move it up there for now. I might make a case for Hitman against some other games, but I loved Titanfall 2. I really do think it's that and Doom were so close to being my favorite first-person shooters, and really some of my favorite experiences at all from last year. So I'm not mad about Titanfall 2 being above Hitman at this point. What about Deus Ex: Mankind Divided against Titanfall 2? I know, Dan, you had suggested we remove it from the list. Do you feel like that one should slide down a little more?
Yeah, I'd put Titanfall above it.
I would not.
What about you?
Not,
you
not even
keep those.
close.
Okay, so that one's up higher for you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to those two. Let's jump ahead here a little bit to kind of get off Titanfall 2 for a second. What about Watch Dogs 2 versus Gears 4? Did you both play both of those games?
I played a little bit of Watch Dogs 2. I haven't played much of it, but I have a pretty comfortable idea of the gameplay loop and the missions. The characters are kind of goofy. Gameplay was actually really fun, though. A lot of fun tools. Gears of War, I mean, it was a great Gears of War game, but it was a Gears of War game. Personally, I would probably put Gears of War 4 just a little higher.
I would
That's
put,
the
and I'm
only
going to
why
let
I'm
Derek.
not gonna boot Dan off right now. I was about ready to hit the eject button.
I mean, you can hit eject for me if you want, man. I would put Watch Dogs 2 ahead of Gears of War 4 pretty easily, and I've played them both. Played them all the way through. I didn't do all the side stuff and all the extra stuff, the hard modes for either of them, but I did play them both from start to finish. I think Watch Dogs 2 is a more complete and unique experience. I think it is a great open world game, whereas Gears of War 4 is a really great entry in a Gears franchise, but I don't know that it did a ton of new stuff. Not that it has to be new stuff to be good, but it didn't do a lot that made it super.
I thought, again,
I didn't think it was that memorable.
Gameplay, let's put it this way. Gameplay wise, you can't really, and some people won't agree with this, but you can't improve Gears because I think it's flawless the way it is. So they didn't really touch the gameplay. They made the gameplay the same, which is a good thing. What they did do was they improved the level design. Like, I liked all the weather effects that you had to deal with. Also, they improved characters. The only gripe I've ever had about Gears of War, the only gripe, was I hated most of the characters. I had no emotional attachment to Dom. I had no emotional attachment to Marcus. Nothing. So anything they would try to throw at me, especially, and I won't spoil it, but in Gears of War 3, when they try to throw emotional stuff at, I remember the first time I played it, I laughed at the game. I'm like, you're so dumb. Gears of War 4 is the opposite. To me, they made Marcus likable. All the main characters that you play with, I liked. None of them were annoying. I thought the story was solid. I'm not going to sit here and say it's an amazing story. In fact, it kind of finishes a little lame. Like, the last part of the game is a little lame. But overall, Gears of War 4 is one of my favorite games from 2016, and it's definitely my favorite Gears of War game. So I do think they improved it. They just didn't improve it in some of the areas that maybe some people would be like, well, what did they do gameplay with? There's nothing really you can do. That game plays perfect. It really does.
It is exactly more Gears of War, and I don't think that was a bad thing.
No.
And they did a really good job of it. And I thought it was a great game.
They didn't Halo
Watch
5
Dogs, Right. Watch Dogs is just a different thing. It's kind of hard comparing the two franchises.
It
As
is.
far as the experiences they had, I don't know. I just enjoyed the Gears of War 4 experience a little more. It felt like the Watch Dogs is something, I've been there and kind of messed around with those types of things before.
Yeah, so I've got an opposite take, and I think I'm outnumbered in this one, but I'll make one last pitch for it. But I'm not going to move it above Gears 4. It sounds like you guys both lean that way, and this is a democracy. We're going to let the people decide. So I'm outvoted here, but I will make the last second case here between these two. That I felt the exact opposite that Dan just described. As I played through Gears of War 4, I enjoyed it, but again, I felt like I was doing a lot of similar stuff, hiding behind cover, popping out, trying to find ammo, shooting the same enemies with guns. Whereas with Watch Dogs 2, I felt like I was doing something new almost every mission, using my technology in a unique way, whether it was the RC or the chopper, or trying to use the environment to distract while I snuck in and got what I had to get. I really loved the experience in Watch Dogs 2. Everything from breaking into a NASA type facility to breaking into the villain's main office, or maybe I was going to take over some kind of power plant. Whatever it was, I had a lot of fun approaching each of those a slightly different way. And so I think Watch Dogs 2 is just flat out plain fun, whereas Gears of War 4, I got to be honest, there was a point where I was like, how much longer is this game? Just because I felt like I was doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah,
I
but
can definitely
to
I
be
can see that
fair,
argument and that point, and I think
Tim,
it
you
is
played all
fair
the
though.
Gears games like back to back to back, and then you played Gears of War 4 with like maybe 1 month of a break from it.
You're right.
Um,
You're right about that.
and I'm not making an excuse. I'm not saying you have to like Gears of War 4 more, but here's my thing. When you're comparing the two and you're saying, well, Watch Dogs 2 gives me a different, like, does varying mission designs and things like that. To me, Uncharted 4 and Gears of War 4 are the same thing. Like, they're the same style game. I'm not saying they're the exact same. People don't read into this. What I'm saying is they do the same thing. They have set pieces, and then they have get behind cover, shoot some stuff.
Yeah,
Now, the only
that's a
thing
valid point.
Uncharted 4 varies is they'll have you do platforming, which that's one of the reasons why I found Uncharted 4 annoying is there were several areas, and I'll talk about this later, obviously, where it was just a lot of platforming. And I was like, this is boring and annoying. Gears of War 4 is more of an action flick, whereas Uncharted 4 is more of Indiana Jones. So to me, those two games, like, if you're gonna say, well, I'm doing the same thing as I've done before, Uncharted is the same way. Uncharted 4, you do the same thing you did in the previous three. So that's
Yeah,
you're just gonna find that in sequels. Watch
yeah,
Dogs 2 for me, and this is just me personally. Yes, I hated the characters. I've it's no secret. I've said that 1,000 times. But I also hated the gameplay. I felt like it was a step back in fun. I'm not talking in any other category. In
right.
fun compared to the first one. I enjoyed the first one. It was I would say it was a little bit more simplistic, and maybe that's what I liked about it. Whereas the second one, I felt like every mission I was going into, I was like walking in circles, going, "What am I supposed to do now? Oh, I got to sit in the middle of the street and pull out my laptop and drive this stupid car in to find." Yeah, no, this is dumb. And anytime I would want to try to shoot something, I would easily get killed in like 2 seconds because my gun was weak and pathetic, and there was just too many guys. So I felt like it, and I
Mm.
get why, as becoming friends with Tim and doing this podcast as long as I get why Tim gets excited about games like that. That's his style. That's
It
not
is.
my style. Gears of War
Yeah.
4 is my style. It's
Hey,
get behind
hot
cover
hot
and
tip
shoot
for
things.
hot tip for those of you playing Watch Dogs 2. Don't sit in the middle of the street. Find a corner, find a sidewalk. That's just
You
a quick
get
hot
what
tip
I'm
for you.
saying. You get what I'm
I,
saying.
I do. I do. I do. I do. Okay. For right now, I'm going to leave Gears of War 4 above it because hope no one misunderstood me. I really liked Gears of War 4. I thought it was a
I
beautiful
mean,
game.
we're gonna have to look at the negatives to try to put
We are.
games ahead of the other
It
ones.
was
I
it was a
get it.
beautiful game, but again, I feel like so was 3. I thought Gears of War 3. I didn't like Judgment very much, but I thought 3 was beautiful, and I actually did think it had a pretty solid story. But Gears of War 4 stepped it up with story. They certainly did, but boy, they didn't come close to. You're trying to compare to Uncharted 4. I didn't think it got even close. But okay, let's talk then a little bit about because we're starting to form these together a little bit. Derek, would you put Deus Ex: Mankind Divided above Gears of War 4?
See, I don't remember my top 10. I want to say that I put Gears of War 4, but going on off of today, I would
Yeah,
say
just
Gears of
today.
War 4 would just be slightly ahead of Deus Ex.
Okay. Because I was going to ask if you wanted to make an argument against Deus Ex versus Watch Dogs 2, because I think I'd fight that one a little bit harder than I would against Gears 4. Because as much, again, I enjoyed Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I really, really did.
I'm gonna
But
let you keep Watch Dogs 2 ahead of Deus Ex, not because I obviously don't think it should be in the top 10 at all, but I don't see the point. I don't think Dan's really emotionally attached to Deus Ex games.
or
And
Watch Dogs for that matter.
yeah, and you've already said that you love Watch Dogs 2, so I'm not gonna hate on your game
Yeah,
that much.
and just for the record, I really did like the first Watch Dogs game. I just haven't invested much time with Watch Dogs 2 yet. So
Yeah, so two is almost
I-
like the skater graffiti version, like where
Mm.
it's just having fun. There's a lot of style. There's a lot of, and in some cases maybe annoying style.
Yeah,
And
and that, a little
yeah.
bit of that is kind of what's turned me off to the game. But as far as the gameplay aspects of it, I mean, I think it's a more enjoyable experience than Deus Ex. So I mean, I like that ranking.
And I actually do think it is visually a little better. So if I'm trying to break down certain categories of it, the fun, the characters, how's the story, I think visually Watch Dogs 2 is pretty impressive for an open world game. I don't think people gave it enough credit for that. It is a pretty good looking game when you get out in the open, and and it runs very smoothly. But I think both of them struggle with enemy AI because both of them involve elements of stealth, more so Deus Ex, but they still haven't quite nailed the how enemies should behave when you call them over to your area. They're all still kind of dumb, but whatever. Are you guys okay with Titanfall 2 being below all three of those? Gears 4, Watch Dogs 2, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Do you think, based on our conversation so far, that's not going to get above any of those?
The only way I would let Titanfall 2 get ahead of Deus Ex is if it gets ahead of Watch Dogs 2. So Dan would have to make a strong case that it has to go above those two.
Personally, I enjoyed Titanfall 2 more than any of those games. So even more than Gears 4, I really enjoyed it. It had a great campaign. It did feel unique with the robot. Just having that mech companion. I don't know. I did enjoy it.
I will
I'd
say
put it above Watch Dogs at least.
Okay.
I will say I liked Titanfall 2 and Doom for the same reasons. First of all, let me say this. I did play Titanfall 2's multiplayer quite a bit. I really, really like Titanfall multiplayer, so that's a selling point for me. But also, I want to mention that the reason why I like both of those first-person shooter campaigns is they both implemented boss fights, and
They did.
I
That's right.
enjoyed the way they did. Doom was definitely harder than Titanfall 2, and Titanfall 2 had one fight that was a little bit frustrating.
Yes.
But
I hated that battle.
overall, I liked both the games for implementing those boss fights in the games and making it a little more challenging and fun.
Okay. There's something about Titanfall 2 because so much of it is multiplayer centric. I think the campaign, I'm glad that they listened to people and they implemented the campaign, but most of that game's effort, energy, and really design is meant to be multiplayer. And so since I didn't experience a ton of that, I'm literally only thinking of it campaign-wise. And so when I just simply think of the meat of the campaign, the impact of the story, and just the overall experience, it just didn't come close to these other three that are above it, in my opinion. Gears 4, Watch Dogs 2, Deus Ex
Story-wise,
Mankind Divided.
no. I think level design, it did good. I think if you go by just pure first-person shooter gameplay mechanics, I still say, and I know Dan likes Call of Duty a lot, but I'd say Titanfall 2 is my favorite first-person shooter when it comes to mechanics. When you're talking like military-type shooters, let me make sure I'm clear about that. So for me, Titanfall 2 it's high on my list, but I still, as a fan of Gears of War 4, screw Watch Dogs 2, and Deus Ex Mankind Divided, I can't put it above those two games. I just can't do it.
Okay, and I'm okay with that. I think Titanfall 2 really shined in its level design and its game mechanics. But,
Agreed.
It
definitely
didn't excel very much in other aspects, and I am thinking more of just a single player, aspect. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, and one quick shout out to Titanfall 2. There's a particular level that I won't spoil anything about if you haven't played it, that once you figure out the mechanic and how you're supposed to use it, It's one of the more creative mechanics, really, in any genre, not even just first-person shooter. It's very cool. It's not used a ton because, again, that first-person experience is pretty short. That campaign is fairly short.
So
But man, that one gameplay mechanic they introduced, and even though you only use it, I think one other time after that, it was very cool. Very cool.
So let me ask this: are we all in agreement then that Doom is better than Titanfall 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why I'm not pushing for Titanfall to go much higher. Right now, it's sitting at the 8 spot, which I know some of you listening, that's going to make you cringe because that was your favorite game of the year. But keep in mind, we're trying to come to a consensus here. I'm not saying Titanfall 2 on my personal list is the 8th best game last year, but if we're just trying to, because I know what you guys are going to fight for in the top. I know what I'm going to fight for in the top. I think 8's about as high as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it's looking pretty good from Gears of War 4 down right now for me.
Yeah, I think, and by the way, for those of you who are listening, this is how we've got it so far. We've got Forza Horizon 3 sitting at number 10. We've got Hitman at number 9. And even though, of course, my personal list, it's much higher than that, I'm actually okay with it landing at 9 because I will admit that Hitman, not unlike something like The Witness, is not for everybody. It really isn't because you have to have a lot of patience. There's a weird sense of humor to it. It's not a run and gun type game. It's just not for everybody. So I'm okay with that being at number 9. Right now at number 8, we have Titanfall 2. Number 7, we have Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Number 6, we have Watch Dogs 2. And number 5, we have Gears of War 4. So that's what we've got so far. So far, all of those are sequels. Is every game on this list a sequel? Yes, it is. Every game in this list is some sort of franchise. It's not an original IP, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's interesting. All right, so let's talk about these games, these 4 remaining games we haven't touched yet. We've got Dark Souls 3, Final Fantasy 15, Uncharted 4, and Doom in these top 4 spots.
I just want to make sure y'all know, while I'm not going to fight for it, Gears of War 4 is definitely ahead of Doom and Uncharted 4 for me. But I'll leave it at 5 because I already know it's not moving.
Okay. Well, I kind of feel the same way, but about Watch Dogs 2 needs to be, in my opinion, above Dark Souls 3. But I'm not a Souls guy.
Ooh,
So, yeah, I'm not a Souls guy.
No.
But see, that's why I haven't mentioned Dark Souls 3. I realize it's going to be in this top 4. Where remains to be seen. But it just, those games aren't, I just don't enjoy them. So, and I put Hitman higher than it too. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about just the order we've got it in right now. First of all, do you guys feel good about these 4 being above all the ones below it?
Yes. Well, besides what I
definitely
already
do.
said, but yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the Gears of War 4, right? And I'm the same way. I feel like Dark Souls 3 just didn't do it for me, so
Yeah.
it's weird for me to have it on there. But I understand how much both of you, especially Derek, and I'm pretty sure Dan, you loved that game too. So I understand the love for it. So let's talk about Doom and Uncharted 4 first, since Derek mentioned those two as ones that he would have slid down a little farther. How would you rank those? Which one would you put above which in that? And either one of you, just chime in. What do you think? Doom and Uncharted 4.
I'm gonna just say it. I'm fine with the top 4 the way it is. Like feel no need to change anything, to be honest with you.
Oh goodness!
You
no,
guys
I don't
would
like.
have to fight. over it.
I don't like the way the top 4.
Now, when we're talking Doom and Uncharted 4, I'd have strong arguments for both games. Both being in top 3. Personally, I'd have to agree with Derek. I like that top 4.
Whew. Oh man, this could be an ugly
I knew
finish.
Tim was gonna get screwed, so I was smirking. There's a reason I didn't put Dark Souls 3 in my list because I was like, oh, Dan's already got it. We're locked. We got it.
It's the same reason I didn't put Final Fantasy 15 in mine. I thought you would have that, and somebody would represent Uncharted. So
yeah.
All
right, well then let me make a case here. I do believe that Uncharted 4 should be above Doom, but I actually think that. See, here's how I would do it. I would actually put Dark Souls 3 below these other 3. And I know you guys would probably have it at the top. So that's where this gets a little awkward. So let me just do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me suggest that I'm just going to rearrange this real quick. I'm going to move Uncharted 4 and Doom both down a spot. And I'm going to put Dark Souls in the number 2 spot. And Final Fantasy 15, I'm going to leave at number 1 for right now. And here's why I'm going to say that. I think, actually, you know what? Yeah. For me personally, Uncharted 4 was my favorite game of the year. And even looking back in the year and catching up on some games, it's still my favorite game of the year. I think it is a monumental game in basically every category. I can't think of much to bash it on. Derek mentioned earlier about how Gears and Uncharted, those series both have a penchant for basically being, enter an area, enemies emerge, hide behind cover, and use every weapon you can to take them out, and then move on to the next area. I just think, even though I think Gears of War's guns are better, I think they are more enjoyable to shoot. I think Uncharted 4 finally caught up with that, and their guns are really fun to shoot in that game. It also adds an element of stealth and environment traversal that they didn't have in previous Uncharted games that I personally really enjoyed. I loved the not a zip line. What is that thing? Kind of this hook shot type. The grapple. Thank you. The grapple that you could use. I thought that was a great addition. It added some really neat things that you could do. And I also think it was by far the best looking game of the year. So when I look at all those things put together, and I thought, even though the concept of introducing a brother after 3 full in-depth games, getting to know Nathan Drake and everyone involved, all of a sudden he has a brother that he's never mentioned before. Once I kind of pushed past that kind of weird inclusion, I loved the story. Their relationship was great. Some of the twists they have throughout are great. The villain was easy to dislike. There was a few characters that I wish they would have done more with, and it looks like in the Lost Legacy DLC they will. But I think overall it did so many things so well. And people talking about the pacing being poor, I feel like that was just looking for something to criticize it for. I struggled with understanding why people really bashed this game. So for me personally, I think Uncharted 4 was the best game of the year. And I feel like that game the same way you guys do about Dark Souls 3, I think. But the reason I put Final Fantasy 15 above it, and I want to see what you guys think about this, I think all 3 of us love that game. I could be wrong, but I feel like we all loved that game and had it somewhere near the tops of each of our lists. That would be one we could probably come to a consensus to that we really loved. So that's why I kind of rearranged it. Right now I've got it at Final Fantasy at the top, Dark Souls at 2, since there's 2 of you who would list that one up higher. I would put Uncharted 4 at 3 because I think it's the best game of the year. And then we've got Doom at number 4, which we all also loved, but no one seems to be fighting for Doom to be at the top.
No, I think Doom at 4 is perfect. Like, I liked it, but I didn't dislike. In fact, I put Uncharted 4 ahead of Doom on my personal list. But Uncharted 4 was like number 6 on my list. So I had 5 games ahead of it. Why? Sure, they did some things better. Yes, the graphics are gorgeous. I still like the characters, although I did find the brother of Nathan to be kind of annoying. But I liked that they opened up the game a little bit more, like the level designs being open a little more. Tim, you brought up a good point about the stealth. It definitely had some areas where you were overwhelmed with a lot of enemies, and they encouraged stealth. You didn't have to, but again, it was encouraged.
Right.
So I do like that. But when it comes to those top 3 games, first of all, Final Fantasy 15 was my game of the year. But now that we're, 4.5 months since we did that show, and I've been playing Bloodborne, and I just finished Neo, and I actually booted up Dark Souls 3 the other day just to get back into it. Dark Souls 3 is tied with Final Fantasy 15. Final Fantasy 15 won over Dark Souls 3 because of the excitement I had for getting back into Final Fantasy. But Dark Souls 3 was tied with it, in my opinion. So those 2 are a lock for me personally at the top 2 spots. Where you move them does not matter. It's not going to impact me. I just don't think Uncharted 4 for me personally, where it fell flat was, I do think the game was a little long. I wouldn't say like it was a pacing issue. I just felt like there was a lot of areas that I went to, or a lot of like a lot of it was really the hey, jump from here to here and go to this area, and those parts of the games felt like they were so much longer than the previous 3, which I had played right before I played Uncharted 4. I played them at the end of 2015 when they launched the collection. I played all 3 of them back to back to back, and I never felt that way in those 3 games. But in Uncharted 4, there were several areas where I was like, oh my gosh, this is just annoying. I don't want to do this. Constantly jumping, and it was like they were like, oh, here's this grappling thing that we could have used in the first 3 games that we never did. Here it is in the 4th one, so let's overuse it. And that was my issue with it. Still a
Interesting.
good
Well,
game,
you know,
but
I-
I had a similar experience with Gears where I kind of like played the others too closely together and it got to 4 and I was like, I don't want to keep clearing the enemies just to trigger the next cutscene.
yeah.
Like that's what I liked about Uncharted 4. That's why I think it's a superior game because you can approach it and complete it with a bunch of different type of tactics that you can use to actually finish it. You don't have to completely kill every enemy for it. That's why I think it's a superior game. But anyway, so Dan, let me hear from you on that topic as well as just this entire Final Four. Let's hear from you.
Well, you know, starting off with Uncharted 4, I gotta agree more with Tim on it. I mean, I really enjoyed it personally. For me, it would probably be my top 3 of 2016. I thought it was exceptional in what it did. I really liked the pacing of it. I didn't think it drug on too long. The story was fantastic, and I just really enjoyed playing it. But I liked the breaths in between the gunfights. It wasn't one gunfight to the next, one cover to the next. It had those platforming sections, and I kind of enjoyed the little bit of break, exploring the environments, climbing cliffs. You know, I really enjoyed those portions of the
A
game.
little more
I
open
felt
than
like-
previous Uncharted, I
Yes,
think.
very much open, and I thought there was actually a little less gunplay and more of that, you know, exploring the environment aspect of it. But
Yep.
you know, overall, I thought Uncharted 4 was definitely probably the best in its series, and you know, definitely one of the best games of 2016. For me personally, Dark Souls 3 was always my game of the year. And then when I got to Final Fantasy 15 at the end of the year, I really dug Final Fantasy 15, got into that, and I kind of thought that was my game of the year here for a while. I did go through and get the platinum for it. I enjoyed everything about that game. I just couldn't get enough. But after I got the platinum for it, I went back and continued playing Dark Souls 3 more. You know, haven't played as many times as Derek, but about halfway through my new game plus, I played the first DLC, half the second DLC, and you know, I definitely, as it resonates a little bit more, it was definitely my favorite game of 2016. So I kind of like what you did with the top 4 right now. It's looking pretty good to me. Doom, I love the experience, but those 3 games are definitely above it for me.
You know what's interesting is that as we're talking about these games, like if you matched up 1-on-1 for each of them, obviously, because I played Dark Souls 3 for, what was the total, Derek? Maybe like 45 minutes or something like that I played it.
It was a pathetic attempt. That's
It was a
all I
pathetic
know.
attempt, yeah.
Did you even beat the first boss?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't remember. It was so forgettable, man. I just didn't enjoy it. But anyway, I feel like Doom, you know, has a potential to be higher. And if we had a Doom apologist on here, like if we had a Jesse White or somebody, or Mark Allen join the crew and talk about Doom, I think Doom might jump one of these 3 just simply because it's possible. For me, it would be Dark Souls 3 that it jumps. But let me ask you guys each this as we kind of try to figure out the best way to finalize this top 4 and the top 10. Derek, how would you rank these right now? You on your own. You don't have to worry about anybody else. How would you rank? You have to keep these 4 in here, but how would you rank them?
I mean, I'd probably just switch Dark Souls 3 with Final Fantasy 15 at this point.
Okay. What about you, Dan?
For me personally, if I wasn't thinking about anything else, I would do the same. I put Dark Souls above Final Fantasy and leave it.
Man.
So I want everybody, I want all the listeners, listen real quick before Tim starts to talk. I want to make sure everybody's very clear. You can't see Tim's face right now if you're watching on YouTube, but he's boiling because he does not want Dark Souls 3 this far up top.
No, I
But
don't.
he's
And I'm
screwed
okay
up
with it being
because
number 2 for that reason. Just to give Tim a leg up, we can all agree on Final Fantasy.
I just want
I'm
to make
okay
sure
with
everybody
this.
knows. But I also want to make sure everybody knows that it's Tim's fault. He did not think this through. I knew if he chose Dan to come on our show that I had a Dark Souls 3 buddy. I knew this. And he screwed up. That's his own fault. So
Yeah, it's my own fault for doing that. Yeah, so if I did this list, it would read Uncharted 4, Doom, Final Fantasy 15, Dark Souls 3.
You would put
That's how
Doom
that.
ahead of Final Fantasy 15.
I would.
That's actually surprising me. That's surprising.
No, I would, and I really enjoyed Final Fantasy 15, but there was enough about it that I remember being like, I'm trying to remember the exact way that I would phrase it, but looking back on it, as much as I enjoyed it, there was enough hiccups here and there. There were enough moments during battles that I thought this angle is making it hard for me to actually play.
Yeah.
Some of the battles, some of the magic especially, just I feel like it needed a little more tweaking in the design of how the combat actually works. As fun as it was and as fast-paced as it was, there were moments that I thought there had to be a better way for them to allow you to quickly pull off the move that you need to pull off, and you couldn't quite do it. So it was really great, but it wasn't quite there for me. I think Doom is essentially a perfect first-person shooter experience, at least for single player. I thought it was. I can't think of any flaws in it. It had a great amount of exploration in it, a lot of mysteries to solve, amazing variety in enemies, and you described the boss fights. I thought the boss fights were epic. That game was tough.
Yeah, definitely.
That game was
Here's
really
how
tough.
I think we can fix this problem we have right now. Or it's my suggestion.
All right, let's hear it.
Dan and I have both basically said that in a roundabout way. While I did pick Final Fantasy 15 as my game of the year, and I also platinumed it just like Dan did, and Dan also felt like it was his game of the year for a while. But after we've gone back to Dark Souls 3, and the fact, and I think this is why Dan and I both feel this way, and Dan can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, we keep going back to Dark Souls 3.
Right.
Bloodborne. I'm going to go back to Neo. These games have infected us. Like we have a virus right now.
Yes.
These are our favorite games. So I think Dark Souls 3 should, even though I understand Tim doesn't like it, should be number 1. Even though I do not love Uncharted 4, I'm not going to be an Uncharted hater. I already said on our Game of the Year show, even though I ranked it on my personal list as a 6, I do think if I replay it, it would move up. So I think Uncharted 4 should be number 2, and I think Final Fantasy 15 should drop to 3 and Doom at 4. That's my suggestion. That allows Uncharted, which Dan likes a lot, and I like. I don't love it.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim, who likes it as his number 1 game, it gives them at least a 2. But I think Dark Souls 3, you're outvoted, is the best game for us.
I gotta say, Derek, I think captured it perfectly. I think that's a great assessment of it. I do agree. I think Dark Souls should be number 1. I'm okay with Uncharted 4 being number 2 in that scenario. And
I love Final Fantasy 15, but I'm not going to.
I love it too, but after Tim's argument, I could almost put Doom above Final Fantasy 15.
Oh man, I would.
I mean,
I
don't know. I really had a great time playing it. Those boss fights were epic. The verticality of the levels and the arenas. It was. I don't know. That's a tough one. I could see the arguments on that, but I'm okay with it.
I do want to point out that my style of gaming has changed, and I'm more obsessed with games that are fun to play. And I granted, I've always played games that are fun to play, but I've put less emphasis on story and characters and all that. And that was what I loved about Final Fantasy 15. While there was some failings when it came to like storytelling and stuff like that, I found Final Fantasy 15 was, with Dark Souls 3, the most fun I had in a game playing it. In fact, I didn't beat the game until I was like a level 50, and you didn't even need to even be close to a level 50, because I just went and played it over and over. I was never in a rush to go through story missions. So I think it nailed gameplay. And so for me, while I had fun with Doom, and I would argue that Doom is probably the best first-person shooter of 2016 as far as gameplay-wise, I still think Final Fantasy 15 is the game I had more fun with. I would leave it at 3.
I'm okay with it being at 3 because I know it's at least in your guys' top 3. Am I assuming that correctly, or am I off on that?
Yeah. No, no.
Final Fantasy 15 is at least in your top 3,
it was
right?
my number 1. I mean, if I had to change my list, Dark Souls 3 would be 1. Final Fantasy 15 would be 2, so it wouldn't slide down far.
Right, and you mentioned it as being like tied for number 1. You did initially pick it as your number 1. Dan, for a little while, thought it was his number 1. It never got close to number 1 for me. It's always been dancing around the 4 and 5 spot for me, but so I still really, really liked it. So that's why for me, I kind of put it at the top right away, knowing that I would have Dark Souls 3 down there by Forza Horizon 3, where I'm like, I haven't really played enough of this to really like it, and it didn't, it's not my kind of game. So that's where I would personally put that. But man, the passion that's out there for Souls games. Here's time for me to be political and objective. The passion that's out there for Souls games, the quality in which that they that they put out these games with such high quality combat and the way you can approach each battle and the strategy that's involved and the way that the community has to come together to help figure out how to take down certain bosses. It's impossible to ignore. I can't pretend like that doesn't exist and like people don't love it. The way that it brings someone like Derek, who's a very busy guy and has a family and a job and other games to play, keeps bringing someone like Derek back to it over and over and over again. I can't pretend like that's not happening, like that doesn't exist. Like that is something special, even if it's not special to me.
And
So I'm not a
Neo nailed that too. So
yeah.
I mean,
Neo
they're
is pretty
just
great,
nailing
and I did enjoy Neo, and I do 100% plan on playing all the way through Neo. I really, really do. So that's my first Souls game that's kind of starting to hook me. Souls style game that's starting to hook me. But that being said, I'm not opposed to it being number one for the conversation between the three of us as we revisit these rankings. I just know that for me it would not be at the top. But I'm okay with this final list. I think you guys made a good case for saying, hey, listen, we all had positive feelings for 2, 3, and 4, for Uncharted 4, Final Fantasy 15, and Doom. But the one I feel most passionate about is Uncharted 4, and I'm alone in that for being number one. And the one you guys feel most passionate about is Dark Souls 3, and there's 2 of you. So I understand the logic behind
You screwed up. It's your fault.
the final list. I
Blame
should
Yep.
him.
have brought
nobody
someone
to blame
else
but
in.
yourself.
So let me try something real quick. We got a couple extra minutes. We are probably going to split this into 2 episodes. If you're listening to this, it's probably part 2, and that's okay. I'm glad we had time to really dig into each of these. If you guys don't mind, we might need to pause if you need to take a minute to do this. I want to know how you would rank these yourself, 1 through 10. So whether you need to use one of those other columns to the right, or if you want to just tell me, kind of go through it. If you want to take time to kind of rank
I can
them.
do it. Like we can just.
Because I want to give.
name
So here's what I'm going to do for those of you listening. I want to. So now that we've done the conversation version, our final list, by the way, reads like this. Number 10 is Forza Horizon 3. Number 9 is Hitman. Number 8, Titanfall 2. Number 7 is Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. Number 6 is Watch Dogs 2. Number 5 is Gears of War 4. Number 4 is Doom. Number 3 is Final Fantasy 15. Number 2 is Uncharted 4. And number 1 is Dark Souls 3. That's how our conversation has landed this list. And I think that's the official list for this conversation. I think that makes sense. Now I want to kind of do something mathematic related. So based on how you rank 1 through 10, they'll get a different point total. So number 1 gets 10 points, number 2 9 points, and so on, all the way down. I just want to see which one will get the most points based on how we rank them mathematically.
Okay, let's do it.
So Derek, why don't since you're ready, Dan, if you want to go ahead and start putting yours off on the side, you can. Derek, why don't you go ahead and tell me however you want to do it, 10 through 1 or 1 through 10. Go ahead.
I'll start on 10.
Okay.
Of course, it's Watch Dogs 2. Hitman.
Why do you hate me? Keep going.
Let's go Forza Horizon 3.
Okay.
And I'm gonna
In case
go
you're wondering,
Titanfall
that's not
2,
position, that's points. But okay.
Doom.
Okay.
Uncharted 4.
Okay.
Deus Ex.
Okay.
Gears of War 4.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 15 and Dark Souls 3.
Okay. All right. Looks like Dan's finalizing his list over there. So in case you're watching, you saw that that's point totals. That's not how Derek ranked them. So that's point totals.
Yeah.
All right. So Dan, while you finish yours up, you're almost done, but let me go ahead and do mine while you're finishing yours up. So I'll do 1. So for me, number 9 would be Forza. Yep. That'd be 2. Dan, if you want, you can fill in these blanks. You see what I'm doing? Basically,
Yep.
fewest points for the lowest. If you want to do it in column E there, you can, and then we can add them up. So I've got Hitman as my 3rd. So I've got Watch Dogs 2 as my 2nd place. I've got Hitman as my 3rd place. I think I would put Doom as my 4th place.
This mother fudger. I know exactly what Tim's doing. This
is-
mother fudger.
I'm not doing anything. I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Oh, I know what you're doing, boy.
And then Final Fantasy, I think, would be next. I'm going to put Titanfall 2 next. Ooh, now I'm between Gears 4 and Deus Ex. See, these both kind of land in the same category for me. Really, really enjoyable. Maybe not the best. That's where I struggle, is with those two. Trying to ignore what you guys ranked them and just give them an honest ranking here. So it's either 3 or 4. I guess I'll give Deus Ex a slight leg up over Gears just because of my personal play style. 24. Look at that.
Oh, like I said, I know what you're doing.
I'm just seeing mathematically where these would land, all right? For those of you who wonder, when we do the game of the year ranking stuff, this is basically how I do it, based on how you rank and that kind of thing. I just give them point totals and then add them up. That way, it's very mathematical. There's no discussion involved, obviously, because you're all just submitting your thoughts. But that's how those things are tallied up. Then we would go. That's what it would look like. The math would make it. Number 1 is Uncharted 4. Number 2 is Final Fantasy 15. Number 3 is Dark Souls 3. Number 4 is Doom, Gears of War 4, Titanfall 2, Watch Dogs 2, Deus Ex, Hitman, Forza. Not too different. It's so close at the top, though. So there's a couple reasons I wanted to do this. Number 1 is just I wanted to see how we personally value each other, because our official list is not this. Our official list is Dark Souls 3 is number 1. But I wanted to just kind of show that, especially in those top 4, we're pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
We all really like those games a lot. So... other than Dark Souls 3, I don't love it. But we all really like those games a lot. And I think to kind of close things out, my thoughts on... Here, let me undo that. Let's get rid of this stuff. My thoughts on 2016 as an overall gaming year, I just really think it's an underrated year. And I was one of the first ones to say it's not that great of a year. But, man, it really, really was. And so I think
it wasn't
great.
a bad year at all, and I think you're right. It was a little underrated, but coming off of 2015,
Yeah.
I think 2015 was a fantastic year, and it was just a little hard living up to that.
Yeah, during our Rank the Year conversations, 2015 ended up as our number 1 pick, but I think 2016 landed higher than I expected it to. I think it ended up in the top 5 somewhere. I forget where. But yeah. Cool. What do you guys think about this list? We got Dark Souls 3 at the top, Uncharted 4 number 2, Final Fantasy 15 number 3, and Doom number 4, followed by the others we've already discussed. How do you guys feel about this final list here for our discussion?
Works for me.
I think it's a great list of games, and I think it's well ordered. I think
Yeah.
it's good.
Not too bad. Not too bad, even though Derek's right. My first mistake was to invite another Souls maniac on here. That was my own fault.
Yep.
Guess who's coming on the show next time we do like a game of the year talk discussion? It's
Who's
gonna
that?
be Tariq Deek.
Great. That's what I need. I need more love from another Souls
Tariq,
fan. That's what I need. Oh boy. So I just switched the camera back on to me, and you guys can all see that I've got smoke coming out of my ears. My face is all red. I'm just
But
guys,
guys, Uncharted 4 is so good. Dark Souls
boy.
3, get good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Dan, thanks so much for being here, and Derek for taking time tonight as well. I think it's latest for Derek. Dan, you're on Central Time, right?
Yep,
So Derek's the one who's up pretty late. So I still got some. We still got some time to game. Derek's yawning over there. Look at him. He's out. He's done. But thank you guys for taking time, and those of you who are listening, thanks for listening. This is definitely the end of part 2 of a 2-part conversation with Dan Phillips as we try to re-rank the games from 2016. So let's not do that again, because I got destroyed in that final ranking there. No, that was fun. Appreciate you guys being here. Thank you everyone for listening, and we're out.
See ya.
All right, thanks, guys.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?